Welcome to today's explainer. It's August 25th, which means we are celebrating the feast of St. Louis IX. And we're diving straight into a really incredible contrast from today's liturgical readings. We're going to look at that crazy tension between just putting on an outward show of religion versus cultivating true, authentic inner holiness. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so let's kick things off with today's gospel from Matthew chapter 23. Jesus says, "You blind guides, you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel." I mean, it's a pretty striking image, right? Jesus is actually using this wickedly funny, completely zany sense of humor here to make a super serious point. He's totally poking fun at the scribes and Pharisees, picturing someone meticulously nitpicking this practically invisible tiny bug out of their drink, only to turn right around and happily swallow a massive, hairy camel.
So Jesus is using this hilarious metaphor to make a brilliant point. Think about the gnats. These are the minor external rules. The Pharisees were out there scrupulously tithing their tiny everyday kitchen herbs like mint, dill, and cumin. But then you have the camels, the massive fundamental pillars of the law that they were completely, utterly ignoring. We're talking about justice, mercy, and faith. Jesus is basically telling them, and us, hey, it is all about keeping things in proportion and getting our fundamental priorities straight. Which brings us to a really crucial point, the definition of hypocrisy that Jesus lays out next. He says the Pharisees are like people who meticulously clean the outside of a cup and a plate, but leave the inside absolutely full of greed, plunder, and self-indulgence. Institutionalized religion always runs this kind of risk, you know? It's entirely useless to look perfectly polished and pious on the outside just to impress everybody if your interior is spiritually corrupt and self-serving. Jesus demands that we cleanse the inside first. Section 1. The True Monarch, St. Louis IX, 1214 to 1270. King Louis IX of France, whose feast we actually celebrate today, wielded immense earthly power, but he focused entirely on cleaning the inside of the cup. He brilliantly lived out the exact three weightier matters, those camels, that Jesus said the Pharisees lacked. Look at justice. Instead of letting the rich dominate, Louis established popular courts. He personally heard the grievances of his subjects and explicitly instructed his judges to favor the poor over the rich until the truth was clear. Then there's mercy. This incredibly powerful monarch founded hospitals, cared for lepers, and literally washed the feet of the destitute himself. And for faith, his devotion was just staggering. He attended 2 masses every single day, surrounded by priests chanting the Liturgy of the Hours, even when he was traveling. That legendary fidelity connects perfectly to today's first reading from St. Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians. Paul writes, "Stand firm and hold fast to the traditions that you were taught." He was urging early Christians not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed by anxieties, but to really hold their ground. And King Louis embodied this completely. He stayed firmly anchored in apostolic truth, steering his entire kingdom with a deeply rooted inner spirit, rather than getting swept up in all the external political showmanship of the time. St. Louis actively cultivated that steadfast interior life. Actually, he was known by his contemporaries as the monk king because of his profound piety and his absolute intolerance for clerical abuses. Rather than obsessing over the outward glory of an earthly crown, he acquired the relics of Christ's passion and built the breathtaking Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, just to house the crown of thorns. He even modernized justice, replacing brutal trial by combat with fair judicial arbitration. And in a really stunning display of mercy, he once spared the life of a count sentenced to death for hanging 3 children. Instead, he imposed a heavy fine, which Louis then immediately turned around and gave to charity. Now, I really want to share this quote with you because it is an absolutely breathtaking glimpse into a pure soul. This is from St. Louis's spiritual testament written to his son and successor, Philip, right before Louis died. He wrote, "I would rather have all my limbs hewn off and suffer every manner of torment than fall knowingly into mortal sin." Wow. I mean, that is the ultimate proof of a clean inside of the cup. For King Louis, obeying God wasn't about putting on some pious display for his subjects. It was a deeply personal, fiercely uncompromising love for his creator. So that brings us to a final, pretty provocative challenge to leave you with today. You've got to ask yourself, are you polishing the outside of your cup, or are you actively purifying the inside? Are we obsessing over the gnats, the minor details and outward appearances of our lives, while happily swallowing the camels of injustice, a lack of mercy, and spiritual emptiness? Today, on the feast of St. Louis IX, let's take a page from the monk king. Let's stop putting on a show for others and start doing the real, weighty work of cultivating justice, mercy, and genuine faith from the inside out. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it leaves you with something truly meaningful to reflect on today.